In this tutorial, I will show you what ActiveCampaign webhooks are for and also how you can use them to integrate almost any tool with ActiveCampaign by using Zapier or Integromat. So let's just dive right in and then we'll first explain what a webhook is. So ActiveCampaign has a help article on their website where they explain a little bit what it is. So they basically say here, okay, a webhook lets an app pass information to other apps in near real time. And in ActiveCampaign, webhooks are used to send data from your account into another system or a database that has an API. So an API stands for Application Programming Interface that can listen for webhooks. So for example, here they show Zapier. So in a bit, I will also show you how you can do it with Zapier and also with Integromat. So it all sounds a bit taggy, but you basically have another application in ActiveCampaign. They provide you with a webhook, which looks like a URL. And then ActiveCampaign will post information to that URL. So they're basically sending a message over with like, hey, something is happening here. This is what is happening. And this is the related data. So in ActiveCampaign, there are two ways that you can implement webhooks. So the first one is hidden in settings. And then we have to go over to developer. And then if you go down here, you can manage your webhooks. So here you find more the account-wide webhooks that you can trigger. So the other ones are in automation. So we'll also show you that in a bit. But an account-wide webhook you can add here. So you can just click add. And then you can select for which list it is. You can give it the name, then the URL of the webhook. Then the type, so when do you want to trigger that webhook? For example, when a contact tag is added and when it's initialized by a contact, an admin user, an API, or by system processes. So if we, for example, want to trigger a webhook when a tag is added to a contact, so then I would call this contact or like tag added to contact, then we need a URL. So I know this website, it's called requestbin.com. And what it basically allows us to do is to send some sample data so that we can see what kind of data it is receiving. So I would just paste that in there. And then here I go over to contact tag is added, initialized by a contact or by an admin user. And then we're going to send some sample data. Then I go back over to requestbin.com. And then you see that we just got a post from ActiveCampaign. So ActiveCampaign sent data over to requestbin, and this is the data that they sent over. So here they tell us, okay, the type of action is that a contact tag was added. It was added at this date and time, and it was initiated by the admin, initiated from the admin. This person is on list number 1, and this is the tag that was added. And then this is the contact that is related to this request. So this is the ID of the contact. This is the email address of the contact, the first name, the last name, the IP address, and then maybe also some custom field value. So by default, ActiveCampaign is sending data like this over. So I know that this is especially handy if you're, for example, having a membership website and you sync your tags with that membership website to give people access to something. So then when a certain tag is added, you immediately want that to sync over to your membership site. So this is one of the ways that you could do. So I have to admit, I'm not using this so often. So I'm using this for my own membership site, but apart from that, I didn't find any use cases for it. But another thing that you could do is you can also create automations and then also make a webhook in that. So if I go over to create an automation, and then start from scratch, continue. So then for now, I will say start without a trigger, no action. So this is what the blank automation looks like, right? And then imagine something is happening inside this automation, and then I want to trigger a webhook inside that automation. So what I could do here is you go to conditions and workflow, and then here to webhook, and then you enter that webhook. So if I would copy this, for example, so this endpoint that we had earlier, and I would paste it in here, I would click save, and then I would, for example, end this automation. Then the moment someone is entering this automation, the webhook will be triggered, and then we end the automation. So I'm just going to call this test trigger webhook, and then I want to show you what happens when we throw a contact into this automation. So we go over here, and here we have Emma Doe. And then with Emma Doe, we say, okay, we want to add her to this automation. So called test trigger webhook. Is it turned on? Yes, I turned it on. Then here I click OK, and then we go back over to our request bin. And then you see that we got another request over here. So in this case, there's no action because we're just triggering that webhook. And then it will just tell us like, okay, this is the contact. These are the fields for that contact and the values of those fields. So that's basically that. And then another thing that you can also do is you can also add query strings to this. So you could here say, okay, question mark. And then for example, you could say, okay, type is new. So then the key, so this is like the name, and then this is the value of this thing. So then we click save. And then we can throw the person in it again, and then you can see what happens is when I click this, then the contact was added. We go back over here, then you see here already type is new. So here you see the same body. So this is the data that we got from ActiveCampaign. So the contact, so here you see Emma Doe, first name Emma Doe, and then also some custom fields and then the values of those custom fields, but also this type is new. And then for some applications that's really handy. For example, in Integromat, you can that way send extra values over that are maybe not stored inside the contact. So yeah, that's basically that. So what I want to do now is I want to show you how you can trigger a zap, so in Zapier, and also how you can trigger a scenario in Integromat. So let's start with Zapier. So what you can do with Zapier is you can connect ActiveCampaign to hundreds or maybe even thousands of other tools. So that's pretty cool. So if I would click here, make a zap, then what we can do is we can select here, okay, I want to do something with ActiveCampaign. Then choose a trigger event. Then we go down here and we say new automation webhook. Then we go to continue. Then we have to select an account. And then I click here, continue. And then we get our webhook. So here you see this URL that you also saw in the request bin. So every webhook is basically a URL. Here it also says webhook URL. So we copy this. Then we go back over to our automation. We paste this in here. Then we go back over to Zapier, then we click here, continue, and then it will basically ask you to send some data over. So we're just going over here again, we go to automations, we click add, and then we add Emma again to this automation, and then we wait a few seconds, and then we click here, test the trigger. And then here it says, woohoo, we found a request. This request was sent to blah, blah, blah. And then you see here all the data that we got. And then all this data you can use further on in your Zap. So if you go over to continue, then it will ask, okay, what do you want to do now? So you could, for example, register someone to a webinar in Demio. You could maybe do something with Vimeo. You also have some Google Actions, so you can add that person maybe to a Google Sheet or do something with Google Drive, or you could send an email with Gmail. So there's really lots of possibilities there. So that's how you do it with Zapier. So myself, I stopped using Zapier because I found this other tool called Integromat, which I think is way better and it's also way more affordable. I think paying $50 a month at Zapier, and now I'm paying $9 a month at Integromat. So it depends a bit on which plan you need, but Integromat is very affordable, it's very similar, and you can do exactly the same. So I will show you now how you can do it in there. So what we do, we have to create a new scenario, which is a bit similar to Zap. And then what I want to do is here, I click skip. And then over here, we basically have our scenario and we can add modules to that scenario. So over here, we can say, okay, we want to have a webhook, here, webhook, custom webhook. Then we add a new webhook. Then I would call this ActiveCampaign. Now in this case, I would add test, trigger a webhook, and then I'm going to click save. And then I copy this. So this is our webhook URL. I go back over to the automation. I paste it in here. I'm going to click save. Then I go back over here. I add Emma again to that automation. And then now you see that this thing is waiting, and now it says that the data structure is successfully determined. So now Integromat knows what kind of data it is getting from ActiveCampaign. So if I click OK here, click save, and then we could add another module. So we could, for example, do something with Gmail, like you can send an email to that person that's like highly personalized, looks maybe like it's coming from you. So you could do something like that. Or what I said earlier, you can also add someone to a Google Sheet. You can also add someone to Google Drive. You can also add someone to your webinar software. Maybe you're using EverWebinar, then you can do that. So there's really lots of possibilities in here. So that's how you trigger a webhook in Zapier and also in Integromat. So what I now want to do is want to show you 2 cool use cases of how you can trigger webhooks inside automations, just to give you some inspiration. So if we go here over to automations, then the first one that I want to show you is for a 3-day limited time offer. So over here you see my automation. So what I'm basically telling here is like, hey, I have an upcoming promotion. And then when the promotion starts, so the promotion is 3 days long, then I'm telling people like, hey, the promotion is starting. Then I tell like a cool story. A day later, then I tell people like, hey, it's the last day. Then in the afternoon, I send an email like, hey, your question's answered. And then a last chance email. But what I'm doing here is I trigger a webhook. And in this case, this is a deadline funnel webhook. So what deadline funnel allows you to do is to create an evergreen deadline. So the moment that this webhook is triggered, then the unique deadline for that person is set. And then when someone is, for example, visiting the checkout page after those 3 days, then deadline funnel will redirect them to another page. So it's a little bit more advanced. I'll probably also make a tutorial about that in the future, but this is just one of the examples. Another one that I really like to use is a one-click webinar registration. So instead of sending someone to a page where they can register for the webinar, so they have to fill out their first name again, or maybe their last name, their email address, this time we just ask them to click one link, and as soon as they do that, boom, we register them to the webinar. So here I have an email in this automation. So the subject is like, hey, there's an upcoming webinar, are you in? And then inside that email, there is a link that people can click. And when they click that link, they basically go to a page on my website where I say something like, hey, cool, you're in, check your inbox in a few minutes. And then what I'm doing here is we have to wait until, so we just say, okay, wait until has clicked link, maxwellkullenberg.com/trigger/join for up to 3 days. So what that means is that everyone who clicks this link within 3 days, they will continue right away. And everyone who doesn't, they will continue after those 3 days, because the 3 days is the time limit for this wait action. Then we have an if else, and in this if else we check, okay, did this contact click that link inside that email? If not, we just end the automation. If they did, we trigger a webhook, and that webhook will register that person to our webinar software. Then we trigger maybe another automation to send them a confirmation email or something like that. But yeah, these are just some of the use cases that I really like using with webhooks. So yeah, I hope that this helps you to understand what webhooks are and also how you can use them. If you have any questions about webhooks, just let me know in the comments below. And on the screen now, you also see some other videos about ActiveCampaign that you can watch if you want to learn more.